Thanks very much to Micheál. So our next presentation is from Noel Gavigan. So just need to get it up here.
No, thanks very much, Sean. So I have time here so as well. So to see, we're just been now in lunch, so we'll try and be as quick as we can on this. So what I'm going to do is run through a number of examples of biomass installations and just a general overview of biomass as a fuel and the different uses it can have over various industries. And just to give a brief overview of where it stands. The other thing I'd like to do is just in terms of the Irish Bioenergy Association, those of you who have not been at any of our events before, just to introduce ourselves. Sean's our CEO and we have a team there of 5 people within the organisation. We work predominantly in the area of biomass, biofuels, biogas and biochar. And the organisation is running since 1999 and we do a lot of work, advocacy and other things for our members as well as running a series of projects. So there's more details about that on our website or you can talk to any of us there. Eugene already talked about the WFQA, which we are certifying now. I think it's 104 suppliers around the country of various forms of wood fuel. And then Sure, we've taken that on board as well as the national supporting body. So that's in terms of both the quality side and in terms of the sustainability of supply to ensure that that can be guaranteed across the country. In terms of the crucial work, I'm going to skip that slide, I'll just go straight to this. In terms of the importance of bioenergy across Europe, I think it's important to point out where we are on this. Generally, we're looking at heating and cooling. Across Europe, we're currently at about 1/4 of our heat demand and cooling demand is coming from renewable sources, or slightly less than one quarter of it. So we're still very, very much reliant on fossil fuels. Within that, you can see there that the bioheat, the cursor is going up, is it? Sorry, no, I have no pointer coming up there. But you can see that the bioheat portion in green there to the graph on the left, about 20% of our heat comes from bioenergy, and then the other renewables make up that second graph here. So you have heat pumps at 3.4%, solar thermal, geothermal making up smaller percentages. But the predominant source of renewable heat and cooling across Europe is coming from bioenergy. So its importance is very, very noteworthy. Second of all, in terms of, this is a graph country by country. What you'll note there again, the EU in terms of renewable heating and cooling is currently at about 22-23%. But unfortunately where we are in Ireland is right over here. We are number 27 out of 27 states. We're the worst on the continent in terms of 5.2% of our heat comes from renewable sources. So you can look at it point of view of glass half full or half empty in terms of an industry, but there's massive potential for expansion here. We have the feedstocks and there is but it is something we really clearly need to address. On foot of that, a number of years ago, Renewable Energy Ireland, which is a conglomerate group of renewable associations, includes ourselves, the IrBEA, it includes wind, the Wind Energy Association, solar, geothermal, heat pump, and I think most of them covered there, but it's a conglomerate of us all. We produced across those organisations the 40 by 30 report a couple of years ago. We've copies of it there on the desk if you want to look at it. But we looked at the resources that are available in Ireland. It's really a snapshot of where Ireland is in terms of getting towards renewable, 40% of renewable heat by 2030 and how we could do that. Starting out, you can see that our oil and gas is about 40% of all our heating needs at the moment. So we have a lot of room for expansion and they're the two key fossil fuels that we use. What was interesting in this report, and I've only one slide on this, but it's well worth reading, we actually have sufficient resources practically available today to more than meet all our demands on heating from various different sources, be it biomass, be it spare heat through district heating, through electrification. But I think it's 55 terawatt hours is our total heat demand. We can meet all of that with resources that are available in the country already. So it's a very interesting report. The bar chart you see on the right hand side there, again within that report we've broken down the heat requirements into temperature profile because it lends itself to a lot to what technology is most suited. And really this conference today is focused on the top two there, so the somewhat green and purple colours there on the very top. Which are process heat from 100 degrees up to 700 or 800 degrees Celsius. So it's really where you're looking at steam, thermal oil or high temperature flue to do your heavy lifting, whatever the industrial process is. So predominantly today we're looking at that area and it's an area of strength for bioenergy. Shortly after that, the SEI produced their National Heat Study, which is a very good and similar report looking at where we can meet our target of zero fossil fuel being used for heating by 2050. And within that, it again supports the idea of bioenergy supporting, depending on the different scenarios they ran several scenarios, between 5 and 16% of all our renewable heat coming from biomass by 2050, which is similar numbers to what we see coming forward. It is worth noting in many different reports, including the National Energy and Climate Plan, which was published last year, that biomass heating is more cost effective than heat pumps in terms of cost per square metre and in terms of cost per tonne of carbon emissions saved. So it does have some distinct advantages, particularly in the high heat sector where high grade heat is required. And the indicative costs can be as low as under 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour. So it has particular advantages. Obviously, there's a high capital cost. There's other considerations to be brought into bear, but its advantages are clear there. We have a levelised cost of heat study, which we're running at the moment. In the industrial modelling part of that, what we've looked at is an industrial heat user that uses 9,000 megawatt hours per year, which is relatively small, and they need 150 degrees heat. We looked at 5 scenarios for that. We looked at if you replace, presuming oil or gas beforehand, with wood chip. We looked at a high temperature heat pump, new condensing boiler with fossil fuel, so still using fossil fuel but a more efficient boiler, using HVO, biomethane or wood pellet furnace, and what the scenario would look like there. Again, we're not going to go into too much detail on that, but it will be on the slide deck for you afterwards if you want to have a look at it. But what we've come across there is, again, the bioenergy comes out. We've taken into account in these the capital cost, the long-term fuel costs, and broken it down into what actually comes out in terms of cost per heat. So you can see there the wood chip is coming in at a little over 4 cents a kilowatt hour, wood pellet a little over 5 cents, and it's various different scales there. So you can see in the bar chart across that what is actually showing a best solution. And it's worth noting as well, and we happen actually in there is within the report we'll be putting out with this, is the cost per tonne of carbon is really interesting to see in terms of, because generally when you're using biomass, you've got a practically 100% reduction in carbon emissions from your heat requirements. So it's a good report to see in it. And then I just want to go into a couple of examples. We decided that because we have an audience here today of people who may not have come across biomass before, just to give some examples of what's out there and what is available or what's existing. So there are a number of large biomass plants across the country. We've just picked out, I have 5 of them here just detailed. So Danone, which is in operation since about 2011, is a 4 megawatt biomass plant. Steam boiler, it's the world's first certified carbon neutral plant to make baby food in Wexford. Astellas Pharmaceutical, where we have Daniel Walsh is actually on one of the panels later on. Again, similar time scale, around 2012 they put in a 1.8 megawatt steam boiler, and what's interesting is they're now building a second plant, which is a brand new plant in Tralee, and it's also, they're putting in a steam biomass boiler as well on that plant, so obviously it lends to showing some good experience on it. IrBEA will be on the panel later on as well. They have a 10 megawatt biomass steam boiler for dairy processing in Roscommon. And then Laois Sawmills, which is somewhat within industry, but they have an 8 megawatt biomass furnace for the production of wood pellet. So just some examples. Another example we've come across is Horswood Nursery in Wexford, and a 2 megawatt plant. The capital cost is just over €500,000. It's running quite a number of years at this stage, but they're saving up to €250,000 a year on fuel costs. So the payback on that particular plant was considerable. So it's now that was largely because they were using high cost LPG, which is usually a higher cost of production. But again, it's an excellent example of what can be done. With that, we asked a number of our exhibitors here today if they would send on some example slides, just to give some examples around, be it around Europe, around Ireland, that we can show people as well, just to give an idea, a flavour of the different industries that can be supported through the use of biomass. So first up would have been Schmidt Boilers, who are over here to the side. They sent a couple of examples. 2.4 megawatt plant. This one is for, I think it's organic fruit and vegetable juices. And again, that's using 10 bar steam, 3.5 tons of steam per hour, and in a 600 kilowatt boiler. And that's operational about 5 years at this stage. A distillery, which you'll see quite a few of them here, 1.2 megawatt distillery running on wood chip. Again, 8 bar pressure steam at 160 kilograms per hour. So again, more in terms of the high-end use of the heat. So again, Schmids are over to the side there, and they're agents here as well. They're based here in Ireland, but it's a Swiss company. Apologies, and they're manufacturing for many years at this stage. So that's the last plant actually from them, which is pellet, and again 115 degrees Celsius, and that's another brewery in Switzerland. Next, Balcas, who's one of our sponsors today. So again, we see here, which is a Vicky Wood pellet boiler, and this is again for distilleries, which we've seen quite a lot of in Scotland. Really, the Scottish distilleries and breweries have adopted biomass in a large way. Very good installation, installed 13 years ago and still running very well. White and Mackey Distillery in Scotland. Another example. What's interesting about this, and you'll hear a lot more about it later on from Balcas in their own presentation, they're using what's termed a powder burner. So they grind the pellet back down into powder. And we've seen a number of examples of this coming on stream in the last number of years, where by grinding it back into a powder and using a particular type of burner, you get a burner with a lot more responsiveness. So if you have a demand where you have lots of peaks and shallows in your steam or heat demand, this is able to adapt rapidly towards that demand change. So that technology is, it's not new. We've seen plants over 10 years on this, but it's something we're seeing a lot more emergence of for particular plants. Clear Power, which is down at the back. So they have a number of installs around Ireland. So some of the examples I shared with us here is O'Hanlon Herbs. Now, apologies, I thought there was a photograph on this as well. But a 720 kilowatt boiler that's operating since 2012, and they're using quite a significant amount of wood chip per year. Very good example, and running like a clock, as I say. Sorry, here's the photos. They're coming on this auto cue. So, and again, it's in the food industry, in the service industry like that, where we see quite a lot of use. UCD, which is one of the largest universities in the state, they installed a biomass boiler in 2007, 1 megawatt, which runs a district heating system around the campus. The campus is somewhere like 150 acres, I think. So all of the buildings are on one heating network, and they get a lot of their heat coming from that biomass plant on site. So another good example there. Woodco, down in the back corner there, so they give some examples there. Boyd Bedding in Oma, which is a 6 megawatt plant, again running on wood chip, and they make bedding for livestock, for animals, for the equine industry, and quite a large energy demand on site. Another animal bedding company, RDT Crawford, a 2 megawatt plant, and again that's using wood chip on that particular site. So Woodco in the back corner do those. Cara, a company from the Netherlands, they have quite a number of plants actually built here in Ireland. So one example here is a steam plant for pet food production. What's interesting about this is it uses straw as its feedstock, so we're not always reliant on the use of wood. There are many streams that you can consider in biomass. Sometimes they're a byproduct of your actual process. And obviously we see that in the sawmilling industry, but there's other industries in food production where at times you can have a feedstock that's one of your byproducts that can be utilised. So that's a good example of something similar to that. And again, they would also do the combustion of dust type pulverised dusts where you get that responsiveness. There's an example of a 1 megawatt plant at 130 degrees Celsius, and that plant is running about 10 years. And finally then the district heating on this plant, and this is the versatility we see with biomass. They're able to run with wood at 55% moisture, so that's practically directly off the tree or directly out of the sawmill. So after you've harvested, your material is coming out. With larger scale plants, especially this at 5 megawatt, you can put it into any large user. You don't have the requirement of drying the material because the plant is well able to handle it. And that's for district heating on a town. We see a lot of systems across Europe on district heating, not so much here in Ireland. We would like to see more of them. Designer Group, over in the corner, Kenny McCauley will be on the panel later on today. And again, they have various experience in putting in plant both in Ireland, Scotland. I think we have an example there from Africa, which I think they have a number of examples over there. So a various range of feedstocks that they've been able to use, especially in some of their African plants where there's various feed streams coming towards them. That one in East Africa, I think, has quite a lot of different materials coming from different directions, and they've managed to find 40,000 tonnes locally to be able to use. And that's the one thing about biomass. It tends to be a local product. We have seen some import and even some export from Ireland in terms of biomass, but generally it's a bulky product. It's usually kept relatively locally. Again, there also have been worked with various clients to look at powder burners. They tend not to be wedded to one technology. It depends on what the client requires. That designer group tend to work with. So that's a snapshot. Now, I did have a slide from CHP Mechanical. Sorry, we didn't get it across. CHP Mechanical do a number of plants around the country. They're one of our more experienced companies here as well. And so apologies for not having the slide up. But we know the company very well, and they've done a number of large installations, particularly in the hotel sector, in some industrial and service industry across the country. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Noel. And in circulating the slides, we'll include the extra slides for the CHP